And like I said in a lot of my other videos, I literally was terrible. Like I was like the worst person on the team. But all I would say is that there was some very strange things that happened when we had to shower together.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
My humiliation ritual literally made me want to quit. All right, so if you just joined a wrestling team or thinking about joining a wrestling team, I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're probably about to join a cult. And the reason I say this is because wrestling is a pretty niche thing, to be honest. And if you try bragging to anybody about joining a wrestling team, they're probably just gonna look at you and laugh, to be honest. A lot of people say wrestling isn't celebrated a lot, but honestly, in my opinion, I think the teams that aren't celebrated, it's just quite frankly because they're not good. In my experience, I've been able to kind of see both sides of the coin. My sophomore year, we pretty much didn't have any placers. One dude on my team placed in the state, making us pretty much a low-level team that nobody really expected much out of. But in my senior year, we had at least 4 people ranked in the top 3 of the state. I was number 1, another dude was number 1, another dude on my team was number 2. And actually, I think another guy on my team was number 1 as well. And that year, a lot of people actually paid attention to us. A lot of people kept up with our ranks. People would see us in the hallway and say certain stuff about our matches and stuff. But mostly, I think that was because our school did a pretty good job of marketing us to the school. Every time we had a tournament, duel, anything of the sort, it would come over the intercom and they would announce us by name of what we did. And because we were actually doing well, a lot of people kept up with us and we were actually kind of celebrated for that. Now, obviously, it probably wasn't as much as something like basketball or football, because I feel like if you were on those teams, you got instant clout, even if you weren't good at the sport at all. Yeah, it is kind of different in that way, and maybe that's what they mean when it's not celebrated. I wasn't really that mad for having to actually be good to get any recognition from the sport. And even in those other sports I was just talking about, it was definitely different levels of clout. The dude who just sits on the bench every game and the dude who's a star player, to be honest. So I think it's just all relative what you're doing, but it's just a ceiling with different sports. But regardless, it's a cult for many other reasons. One, let's start with the goofy team antics. I ain't gonna lie, this was something when I was a senior and junior and leader of the team that I really tried to get away from. I ain't gonna lie, when I was a freshman and they had the older kids doing certain stuff and breaking us in is a nice way to call it, I did not appreciate that, and I thought that most of it was just completely unnecessary. And ultimately, I think it drove a lot of people away from staying on the team. Now, you could say this is a good thing or a bad thing, because when I joined the wrestling team, it was probably 20 people on the team, to be honest. And when I was a junior, senior, it was 50, 60 people on the team, literally. And honestly, when we got to these bigger numbers of the team, there was a lot of just warm bodies who were there just to kind of be there, to be honest. But regardless, more people on the team is usually a better thing for the team. So you can kind of see it as a net positive or negative. I think it really just all depends on your mindset towards the thing. Anyway, let's get into some of those team antics. One, I know all of y'all have seen the thing where all the wrestlers dye their hair blonde whenever they do a state championship or something, because I guess they're going Super Saiyan Goku or something, and they think their hair is going to give them powers or something like that, which honestly at surface level is pretty harmless. I never did anything like this because I thought it was always dumb. I know, low team spirit for me. I also seen teams all wear pink Crocs or something like that, or they just say some silly chant on the side while the wrestler is wrestling or something like that. And honestly, all of this stuff is not bad. Honestly, most of this stuff I feel like just sums up to team spirit, but definitely gives some cultist activities. One of the bad team antics that I honestly don't want to go too much into the bad team antics because I don't want to really get anybody in trouble. But all I would say is that there was some very strange things that happened when we had to shower together.
What?
Not shower together like we were in the same shower, but when we would shower as a practice. Some stuff would get a little weird sometimes. That in our hotel rooms, honestly, you put a group of 14 to 18-year-old people in a hotel room by themselves unsupervised, it's bound to be a lot of stupid stuff that happens. So maybe on second thought, it's not really a cult. It's more of just a bunch of young dudes with no life experiences just doing dumb stuff all day. Let's get to the actual wrestling part. Now, I'm from Louisiana, and I don't know how it is all around the country. I'm sure in most places around the country, most people start when they're 4. But in Louisiana, it seemed a lot more common that a lot of people started wrestling when they were in 9th grade or something like that. Now, I wasn't exactly like this. I did wrestling for one season when I was 11, 10, and like I said in a lot of my other videos, I literally was terrible. Like, I was like the worst person on the team. I would get on the mat most of the time and literally just run off the mat. And I probably won 2 matches the entire year, bro. It was pretty bad. I did do jiu-jitsu after that, which actually I still do to this day. I'm a purple belt now. But I ended up being pretty good at that, which probably ended up helping me into my wrestling career as a high schooler. Now, the only thing with that is that I did jiu-jitsu like immediately after I did wrestling the first time, and I stopped whenever I got to middle school. So the problem with that is that even though I did do jiu-jitsu before that, there was a few years where I didn't practice at all. So at that point, I like was familiar with some stuff, but at the same time, most of the stuff that made me good, I had forgotten. It wasn't like I just picked it right back up where I left off, which is bad for wrestling because wrestling has a big learning curve. A lot of the people who were wrestling since they were young, a lot of them would tell you that they sucked like me whenever they were young and just ended up being good after a while of constant repetition. So the thing about me taking off that much time is that by the time I got there, I was like literally not at square one, but probably at like square 2.5. It wasn't that bad though, because like I know from a lot of my other videos, I was eventually able to regain my steps and able to become good again. But there's no doubt in my mind that if I would have continued with the journey like the whole time, I would have been like significantly better. Let's go to those first 2 years of me wrestling though. I ain't gonna lie, my first year, I was definitely good. I was like cutting those freshmen up. My school, whenever you're a freshman, you only really compete against other freshmen, which usually gives you some sort of inflated sense of ego by thinking you're actually good, but you're not. You're just going against freshmen who don't know anything just like you. I really feel like the reason they did this is so kids don't get discouraged whenever they make the hop up to JV or varsity, so they can know where they truly rank in the kids of their class. At the same time, you really don't, because the kids who were like doing it their whole lives and they were actual studs, most of them didn't even compete in this freshman division. They were already in varsity. And if they're already going against kids who are better, who have more experience, they're going to develop faster. So sometimes it just makes you feel like you're good for no reason. I remember whenever I did my first JV tournament, I thought it was just some huge step up in competition. But obviously, hindsight looking back, it wasn't. It was literally just freshman division pro or something like that. So the kids who were here were usually just 11th or 10th graders who couldn't make the varsity because they weren't that good. Or again, freshmen who were trying to make the step up. And sometimes you do get a few outliers because there were some people who were in JV. If you had multiple people who were good at one weight, obviously everybody can't be varsity. There has to be only one starter. So sometimes you'll run into people like this and they'll give you a good challenge. But honestly, that was most of the time few and far between. And this just could be just for me because obviously at a certain point I got to be a lot better. But a lot of the people who were in JV just weren't very good competition most of the time. But boy, oh boy, when I got to that varsity, I was up for a rude awakening. I feel like this is part of the coach like humiliation ritual for me, to be honest. But I went like 0 for 12. But I ain't gonna lie, I don't think it was really all my fault whenever this happened. Because for some reason, my team made me not go up 1 weight class, but 2 weight classes. I weighed probably around 139 and I was competing at 152. And some people who watch this are probably not gonna be familiar with wrestling. But just to emphasize how absolutely insane that is. At the varsity level, there is people who are probably competing at 152 who are literally cutting from 170, meaning that whenever we actually step on the mat, I'm going against people who are 170 with a 40-pound difference. Because yes, I was 139, but I had to like eat extra to be 139. I was probably at this point, more realistically, 137 or 136. Obviously, I'm not a big person at all, but people who are that big, a lot older than me, and actually good, they're washing the floor with me, bro. Weight classes exist for a reason, and people who train every day and they train at weights that are a lot higher than you, they're going to pick you up and throw you like a rag doll twin. Especially at that point in my career where I didn't even have a lot of experience. I ain't gonna lie, this did take a whole mental toll on me. My humiliation ritual literally made me want to quit. I was not feeling that joint at all, bro. Do you know how embarrassing it is literally to go in a match and literally get washed? And more terrible than that, it feels like there's nothing you could do. Because like I said, these people were a lot bigger than me. They're literally just pretty much at that point just lying on the ground helpless with nothing to do and nobody can save you. Because that's the beauty and the terror of wrestling too. It's a 1v1 sport. Meaning that it's me against you. It's mano y mano. There's no other team to blame for any fault that happens in a match. It's all on you. Which honestly is the reason why I love wrestling, because everything was on me. I love the fact that everything was on me. But also when I sucked, the reason I hated wrestling because everything was on me. So you know how bad it is to tell your friends like you lost both of your matches on the tournament? And then they ask you if it was close and you're like, nah, I got pinned in both of them, bro. First round. And I know a lot of people who are coming up in wrestling are gonna feel it too, but just be prepared prepare for the tears to come out after you lose. But if you're anything like me, cry in the corner, cry in the bathroom, and nobody can see. I wish I had followed my advice back then, but hey, bro, I made a lot of scenes and I cried in a lot of public places. I eventually went on to do pretty good. I placed twice. I was 6th and then I was 4th. And at that point, wrestling didn't even feel like a cult anymore. It really just felt like the team and sport that I was on. Obviously, if I saw I hated being #1 in the state wrestling video. I didn't really like being #1 in the state. It was a big target on my back. I remember they had this one dude, his whole goal the entire summer was just to beat me. And I remember hearing that like, bro, I didn't even know who this dude was, bro. That means there's like a bunch of people in a bunch of different parts of the states who look at my name, probably look me up and analyze literally every single part of my technique, bro. And I did not like that at all. I did not like being the one to beat. And honestly, at the time, I probably should have just embraced it more. But obviously, hindsight is 2020. We all talk about what we should have did. But if you watching this, has that opportunity or will have that opportunity in the future, if you get there, just embrace it, bro. Don't look at it as something that's like terrible or it's just this huge burden on your life. At the end of the day, bro, once you graduate, this ain't even gonna matter no more for real. Unless you're like Carter Starachi or you're going on to be a college wrestler. But for the vast majority of people, it probably won't even matter. Even then, if you go to college, it really doesn't even matter. At the end of the day, bro, our purpose on the earth is so much greater than sports, and you are so much more than a sport. So don't let a sport dictate how you feel about life at the time, bro. Kind of went into a whole story about my wrestling career. But let's go into the last cultish thing about wrestling. And this is weight cutting. Like I said earlier, when you're 152, it's people who's cutting from 170. And in my first 2 years, I ain't cut any weight. But in my last 2 years, I cut weight like scissors, bro. I went from 155 to 138, bro. And I promise you, bro, it was so bad, bro. My lips would turn white, all type of stuff. I even passed out one time after the match from like being like malnourished and stuff like that. And honestly, I wish I could tell you like, don't cut weight. But to be honest, bro, if you're competing, you almost have to. And the whole concept, I think, of cutting weight is so dumb because if you really think about it, most of the people are cutting weight from probably about the same walk around weight to the same weigh-in weight. And then when we step on the mat, we're probably around the same weight anyway. The only outliers to this is somebody cuts like bull-cool weight. But the only thing about that is if you cut that much weight, bro, by the time you step on the mat, you're gonna be so weak that it pretty much negates all of the advantages. Unless, of course, you're losing weight in a healthy way. But most of the time, that only happens at higher weights. When you get to be small like me, like the 150s, 130s, bro, you probably don't have that much to give. And all the weight you lose is probably majority water weight. Now, obviously, I did lose some fat and muscle. And that's why my pants didn't even fit me when I got to my weight class. I remember I was talking to a dude at jiu-jitsu who wrestled too. And he said whenever he went from 190 to 170, he had to get different pants too. Honestly, bro, weight cutting is one of the dumbest things that I really feel like should almost be banned from wrestling. I think you should almost have to do a hydration test at every tournament, bro. And that's only because the negative health effects it has and the way I know it personally made me feel during the time. Now, I mean, being like 146, cutting to 145, I don't think that's that bad. But being 146, cutting to 132 is a lot different, bro. That could be detrimental. So hopefully with that, I hope that some way, even with wrestling, not even just wrestling, like UFC, boxing, all of this stuff, they find a way to make this a little bit more safer for the competitors. We don't want another instance of the guy who unfortunately lost his life to happen again. Especially with somebody young just doing it for high school. It's just not worth it, bro. If you feel yourself weak or not up to par, bro, don't put the sport over your health, bro. All right, so that's pretty much it for my wrestling is a cult video. If you have some more things on why you think wrestling is a cult, leave them down in the comment section. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you like the video. Every little bit is much appreciated. Thank you for tuning in today. Hopefully see you next time.